Hi everyone, we're back. Sorry about the noise. We were doing a restream. I think that might have been the issue. Please do let us know straight away if you're hearing that that high-pitched noise again. For those of you who haven't been with us for the start of this presentation, we do have we couldn't get the PowerPoint up right now. It was more important that I get back on live with you. I know that your time is precious, and I know you've probably scheduled this time to watch the live. So we're back. We're operating as we can, but I do have a little presentation, little slide presentation that is over in our Dropbox. You can access that. I'm still going to be following along from those slides, even though they're not going to be on the screen. They are over in our Dropbox link. If you don't have that Dropbox link, please email info@personalcarescience.com.au so that you can access. And you also get all of our free formulas from YouTube and all of our reports, all in that one Dropbox link. So we were just opening up to live questions. So we've just covered our little bit of emulsifier 101. So please, if you do have a question about emulsifier selection, please post away. So again, remember, if you are a small brand, remember to go to our createcosmeticformulas.com website. That's a software program that actually helps you create the formulas, so you don't have to know full chemistry. It will help you pick the right materials. But there is an ingredient suppliers tab on that website. And that has ingredient suppliers all over the world, all small suppliers. We only list small suppliers there that you can purchase small quantities of materials from. There are no large suppliers listed there, and we won't do that either, because the entire purpose of that program and that site is to suit the small brands or those people just starting out that can only purchase in small quantities. So please do post your questions that you have about emulsifiers, about emulsifier choices. Hopefully you've all been able to join back online. We've got to direct our Facebook audience over to our YouTube channel. Any questions, Victoria? No? As I mentioned before, one of the other things that's important was that net. And again, that's that little diagram, that little diagram there. And we were talking about the net. Now, that's your polymer selection as well. Now, when it comes to choosing ingredients, as I've mentioned before, that you can have the right ingredients in your formula, but if you don't put them together in the right way, then it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how good your ingredient choices are. Now, nothing is more crucial than the way you process your gums and polymers. So that little net that was in that drawing that helps stabilize your emulsions, it's incredibly important. I mentioned before that that polymeric network, that gum network, helps provide your climate stability. So going from cool to hot climates, if you're finding your product is changing, then probably you need to look at your gum or polymer network, and that helps with that as well. Definitely your emulsifiers and having a blend of emulsifiers will help with that, but having that polymeric network really, really does help with some of that stability, also long-term stability. Method is absolutely crucial when it comes to your gums and polymer selection, and making sure that you process them in a way that is going to get the best performance and stability out of your gum or polymer. For example, if you've got a carbomer, they're fantastic to stabilize creams and lotions, but if you ever subject them to high shear, you might as well not add them in the first place. If you've got a lot of electrolytes in your formula, or if you adjust pH too much at the end, again, they'll fail, so they might as well not even be present. So it's very much about making sure you have the right method, not just for your emulsifiers, but definitely for those gums or polymers as well. Okay, we've got some questions coming in. Is there any natural emulsifier? Does it blend easily with other ingredients? It depends on your definition of natural. How natural do you want that to be? I have got a video where I show, skincare good enough to eat, and I actually use food ingredients. But the aesthetics properties of that product definitely don't match what you can get with more commercial emulsifiers. Now, if you're allowing that definition of natural to include naturally derived emulsifiers, emulsifiers that are totally from natural sources and go through simple processing like esterification, and definitely your natural certifiers will accept that as a natural emulsifier, then yes, you have loads of choices, and they do perform really well, and some of them have absolutely exceptional sensory feeling. So yes, there's loads of choices is the short answer if you're going to accept naturally derived as part of that natural definition. If you wanted to say completely natural, then you are really back to looking at, say, a gum to stabilize the formula, and it doesn't give the best aesthetics. So while you could get some that will provide that type of emulsification type property, they're not technically emulsifiers. The naturally derived ones will provide you with some great sensory and stability, and they're very easy to use, just like your synthetic emulsifiers, really. Question 2. What should we keep in mind to choose the right emulsifiers? Please, if you weren't here for the earlier part of the presentation, please go over to our Dropbox. I've got the full slide there. I've got a nice little summary. Again, this is very small, just my notes, but you can get the whole slide there, the whole presentation. One of the first things really is, are you limited by how natural or not the ingredient needs to be? That's probably one of the first criteria you need to start from. The next is going to be your supply. What quantities are you going to be purchasing? Like, in other words, what's your batch size? What quantities will you need? And that will determine which types of suppliers you go to, the big suppliers or the little suppliers that I mentioned you can access from our other program site. So that's straight away going to be your first considerations. Then from there, you're going to look at things like price, because price is obviously going to impact your finished product. And then once you've narrowed it down there, and you'd still have a fair bit of choice, you'd start to look at things like skin feel or how much viscosity it brings to the formula. Different emulsifiers will bring different viscosity to your formula. They need to be used in different amounts for different stability and stabilizing effects, different viscosity effects. So you'd start with how natural or not, what's available to you based on the size of batch you're creating, price, and then it would come down to sensory and stability. And that's pretty much how you'd want to approach it. And there's nothing wrong with getting a few different types of emulsifiers in that are in your right natural or not philosophy, ready to supply, price-wise, and then make your emulsions and feel how the product feels. See how it performs when it's applied. See if it suits your target market. Never forget your target market. It's not just what you or I like, it's what your target market is going to want that really, really matters. And of course, that is also why price needs to be considered before we get to the sensory aspects, but that would also drive your decisions. Another question, guidelines to choose them. What should we think about? Well, I kind of went through that then. That would be the key things that you would think about. And of course, then make some samples. There's only so much you can do in theory before you actually need to make some samples and see how does this product feel. And then stability. Definitely run your stability tests. Freeze thaw is a fantastic short-term predictor of how well your emulsion is going to be stabilized. If you have a centrifuge, great, that's going to tell you in 15 minutes, but a lot of people don't have a centrifuge. And if you're asking me honestly, do you need one? No, you can get similar results and predictions. Remember that accelerated stability tests like freeze thaw or high temperatures are only ever predictions. They're never guarantees of real long-term stability. But you can find out within about 12 days, 6 cycles of freeze thaw stability testing, how good your emulsion is really holding together. If you don't have separation by the 5th or 6th cycle, I'd say you've got a pretty stable formula. So yeah, it'd definitely be, you'd start with natural or not, what you can source, price, then you'd make a few different samples with a few different materials for the sensory and performance aspects, and that would again be based on what your target market wants. Then you'd run some accelerated stability, and that would definitely help you decide which emulsifier is best for your purpose. Question 4. I'm having issues with a ringing gel. Not sure what that is. I have read it's equal inputs of water, surfactant, and lipid. Currently, I don't know much about ringing gels, I'll be honest. Currently, 55% water, 25% stearate, 25, 2% lipid. Okay, well, I've never seen a formula created like that. First of all, this is meant to be a gel. That's a bit odd. That much emulsifier, when you've got too much emulsifier in your formula and it doesn't have enough oil to hold, it's not going to be happy. Like, it needs to hold something in the golf balls. And again, I wish I had my PowerPoint, but if we're using that as an example, with these little golf balls here, we're calling micelles is the correct term. I liken them to a golf ball, and they're floating around inside your emulsion. Now, if you've got a lot of emulsifier you've got a lot of shells of golf balls holding nothing in them, you're going to have a big stability issue. And also, you've only mentioned one emulsifier there, and I definitely do not recommend you make an emulsion with only one emulsifier, because, well, the only way, well, again, you still wouldn't do only one emulsifier, would be in a conditioner. Conditioners are different way of creating an emulsion. It's with cationic charge, but you still need non-ionic materials in there, so it's still a blend. You should always have a blend of emulsifiers in your formula. Always, always, always. Underline it. No generalizations there. That's an always from me. Always have a blend of emulsifiers. So if you're getting separation or cracking or something, first of all, that's a huge amount of single emulsifier to use for a very, very small import of oil. I've never seen a product created that way. And it wouldn't be happy because you've got nothing in the golf ball to hold. So the emulsifier isn't going to be happy with an empty golf ball, for example. And there's absolutely no polymer mentioned. And again, that polymer is that stabilizing network I was talking about to hold all of your golf balls in place over the long term. So revisit that. And again, I'm not familiar with a ringing gel to be able to comment further, but based on what you've just said, there's nothing there to help stabilize that formula properly. Question 5, just make my first batch with Cannabiota. Anytime I shouldn't add this product. That's an active, I believe, like a prebiotic stem cell, I think, for cannabis. Today's topic is all about emulsifiers. If we were to be discussing actives, I'd be able to assist you with that. But today we're talking about emulsifiers. So please ask questions about emulsifiers to keep on topic. Question 6, what's the best method when formulating with a carbomer? Okay, there's a couple of things you can do. The key principles of using a carbomer, and again, we are talking about emulsifiers today, but you can use carbomers to stabilize your emulsions, and in some cases, in small oil contents, they can be your polymeric stabilizer only. They're the little net. They're the little net, like I say, for want of having a PowerPoint on the screen, it's the same slides. They're the little net that help stop your golf balls from moving around. So with a carbomer, key principles: do not add electrolytes to the formula, except you do need to alkalize your carbomer, but don't ever add acid and bring the pH back down. You'll just destroy the formula. Never use high shear once you've added the carbomer. Never, never, never. Not even, oh, do I blend it quickly? Just one little zap with my homogenizer. No, never, never use that homogenizer or high shear once you've added your carbomer. So they're the key principles. So you can either add them at the start. I do recommend neutralizing later, simply because when you neutralize your carbomer, viscosity builds extremely quickly, which means it becomes hard to stir. So you're better off adding that carbomer at a point where it's still liquid. You need to make sure it's wetted thoroughly. Don't just add it and then continue processing as if it's all done. Generally, you need to add it and stir for about a half an hour or so, low shear only, propeller stirrer only. And that helps it disperse and wet out. Again, you won't get your full viscosity at that point, but that's a good thing, because if you're using side sweepers and propeller stirring, you want reasonably low viscosity at that point so that you can get a good homogeneous mixture. Don't use a homogenizer ever, but when I say homogeneous, I mean even dispersion, even mixing. Then you can definitely heat it. You can combine your oil and water phases. Again, it's still lower viscosity. Then you neutralize it. And generally, your carbomer materials work best when they're around a pH of 6.2. And so you need to neutralize it to take it up to about 6.2. Don't use acid to bring it back down, otherwise you'll just destroy it. Careful what actives you use, careful even some of your preservative selections. If they're very acid-like, they'll destroy the viscosity. They'll stop it from turning into this net. Like a little picture. You won't get the little net. You'll just collapse. It will collapse the structure. Similarly, high shear will cut that net into tiny little pieces, and again, it just won't work. So they're the key things there. Are co-emulsifiers like glycerol stearate good occlusives? Occlusives, in as much as film formers, no. It is a waxy substance, so you will get some moisture protective benefits. But if you're really looking for a film former that is really going to hold moisture in, you're better off looking for an active with some data to support that function. Glycerol stearate on its own, this is actually a good time to mention, be careful with the inky name. There is glycerol stearate SE, which is high HLB and suits oil and water emulsions. There is glycerol stearate citrate, which is an anionic emulsifier and suits oil and water emulsions. And then there is glycerol stearate on its own, which is low HLB and is best in water and oil emulsions. Now, you can definitely use glycerol stearate in oil and water emulsions to help build viscosity and help reduce white rub-in time, but you would generally only use a very small amount. Otherwise, it will destabilize your oil and water emulsion. So just be careful with the actual substance you're using. When people first start out, I do know they get glycerol stearate SE, glycerol stearate citrate, and glycerol stearate confused, and they all have different functionalities and will have a different impact on your formula. So just be wary of that one too. Could you please post the Dropbox link to the slides? Please email us for the Dropbox link, info@personalcarescience.com.au, so that we can give you that Dropbox link properly. Can you talk about lecithin, how and when to use? A good question. Now, again, it depends on the grade of the lecithin. I actually have a video on YouTube with lecithin, so please watch that video. You'll see that the different grades of lecithin have a different impact on the formula, and I do use the trade names in the video. The reason I use the trade names, they're all lecithins, but I use the or forms of lecithin. I use the trade names because I can't answer that question with a general bland statement about lecithin. I can't chemically, because every different grade of lecithin is going to work a bit different in your formula. So please watch that video. It is all about lecithins. It is all about a couple of different lecithin derivatives. And again, I use trade names so that you can specifically see the difference between the different grades of lecithins, because it does matter. And again, that's free on YouTube. If you go to our YouTube channel and you type in the search bar lecithin, the video will definitely come up. And of course, once you've got that Dropbox link, you can access the full formula with all the trade name information. And I also tell you which ones were my favorites. They do feel amazing, is another thing I should mention. Lecithins in your formula do give a beautiful sensory effect. So please, if you want to try them out, I would encourage you to. Again, processing is important for the different grades and the different materials too. So please watch that video. It will give you a bit of an insight as the different types available. And then if you've got a small supplier that you're sourcing your lecithin from, please make sure you find out exactly which material they are selling, because not all lecithins are the same. And again, that's explained more in that video for you. My other question is about swapping emulsifiers. My customers have had excellent results with our cream that uses Retamulse, but we'd like to switch to Emulsa. Would this reduce efficacy in any way? The only way you can know, because I don't know what else you've got in your formula, I don't know your oil input, I don't know your polymers, and you'll need to get the two and work with the two. But I do want to caution you on thinking that you need the same inputs of each, because that's not necessarily the case. So what you need to make sure you're doing is looking at the recommended input for your Retamulse and how you've used that in conjunction with everything else that's in your formula. And then look at the Emulsion, and again, look at everything else you've used in your formula. And then you'll determine the best inputs of each based on what else is in your formula. And I do have to really emphasize that point, because it totally depends what else you have in your formula. And then make samples. Make samples and find out. I do have a video where I'm using Emulsion. It did feel great, felt really, really amazing. It was a very interesting material to use. So I definitely encourage you to get a sample and try it out, because it does have a great sensory feeling. But then also consider why you're making the change as well. And definitely make samples. It's not something, you can't just pick an emulsifier and make one sample and get your perfect result. It does take a few samples to get the product exactly how you want it to be. Given the time, I'm going to switch over to our next topic, which is sure to be even more controversial. And again, we do have the trusted links and information in the slides that we can provide you from Dropbox. So with ingredient safety and clean beauty, one of the things I really want to emphasize to you right now, and again, I get frustrated on this because people just don't want to believe me. And if you don't want to believe me, please just leave the chat bar, because I'd really like to have a proper discussion with those of you who are really interested in the truth and the reliable search sites and information. Every ingredient that is permitted for use in a cosmetic product, when it's used within its regulatory limits, is safe. Every ingredient that you want to use in a cosmetic product, when it's used within its regulatory limits, is clean. One of the issues we have in our industry is there's so much fear used to sell products. Now, I just want to caution you, if a company has to use fear to sell their product, why aren't they having a better story about how great their product is instead? That's the first thing I'm going to say. Now, I am going to back all of this up with search sites. And again, if you contact us, I've got the actual hyperlinks in the slides. You can go straight there and you can get the full information from them. You don't even have to believe me. Just go and search the sites. They're government sites. Okay, so it's not just me saying it's not. I'm not trying to sell you a brand. I'm not trying to scare you into using my product because I don't have any. And I am issuing you with the government sites. And you will see there is pages on pages on pages. Like some of these documents are 70 pages long, where they look at all sorts of data and studies on the way it's absorbed, on the way it's combined with other ingredients. They look at how it's used on children, adults. It's massive studies, so in depth. And you've got all of these scientists critically evaluating all of the studies and data and then drawing their conclusions. So I'd say, you know, again, if you think you know better than them, you're probably not best in this chat group. If you'd like the sources to find the information for yourself, they're definitely provided. And that's the best I can do. I can't convince you if you don't want to search those sites and have a look at the data that they've accumulated and put together to draw their conclusions. And these are the same government organizations that are giving government their advice over whether an ingredient should be used or not, or giving government advice about the limits that are set for ingredients. I hear a lot of misinformation about, oh, cosmetic industry isn't really regulated. And that is so not true. Again, it is very regulated. I hear, oh, there's only a handful of prohibited ingredients in the US. Again, one of the company's responsibilities, this is not just US, but all over the world. One of the company's responsibilities is to make sure that the product they put onto the market is safe and suitable for consumer use. Now, and this is on the FDA website. And again, I've got a video coming up soon about, it looks at lead and heavy metals in lipstick and makeup. And this is one of the first videos where I'm starting to show you all of the links, and I'm actually got the links there. I've got screenshots from the FDA, from the EU, from Canada, from Australia, showing you that all of these governments all have stipulated in their legislation prohibitions on certain ingredients, as well as an overarching company responsibility to make sure that that product they put on the market is safe. Now, what that means is when there's contaminants or adulterations, because that's the next thing people say, but what if it's in there incidentally? What if it's in there because it's naturally occurring? Again, it's a company's responsibility to make sure that their ingredients pass the required specifications so that consumers can use their products safely. If not, it's considered adulterated or contaminated, and either way, it's considered against the law. And again, in this video, I have an actual FDA link with an FDA screenshot showing you it's against the law and it will be removed from the market. So again, it's unfortunate there's so much misinformation out there. All I can do is provide you with the links to the credited information that is the information used to inform governments, and that's the information that they're using when they set their limits. So again, I can't make you believe me, but I can give you those links so that you can do the research for yourself and see it for yourself. Several issues coming from other sites is the way the ingredients are used. And again, I please need you to remember that the overarching principle is that every ingredient used in cosmetic is safe. One of the issues with clean beauty is there is no set reliable definition amongst now as their clean beauty, and then you read another brand and it might conflict with that, and it's just because there is no. So again, we've got to blow thinking every ingredient that is approved for use and used within its regulatory limits is considered safe and clean from a safety or toxic point of view. Full stop. The next thing from there is sometimes people say, oh, well, clean beauty also refers to sustainability or having a good consumer conscience and things like that. You know, my advice here is if that is what's important to your brand, then say that. Don't say clean beauty. The other thing is there's a lot of indie brands that think they have to jump on this bandwagon of saying that their products are safe and clean and non-toxic. And again, you're really missing the point. If that's all you can say about your product, if that's your major marketing message, then your product. And you will notice that the really big successful brands and even the smaller brands that become big have a stronger message than just what they're avoiding in their products from a safety perspective. So if it is that your products are using sustainable ingredients, say that, not clean. If it is because you're using fair trade sourced materials, say that. Don't use this term clean. So to me, clean beauty is a dirty word. It's the word that we really encourage brands to use. If it is sustainable, call it sustainable. If it is fair trade or eco-conscious, like you're helping small communities, use those terms. That is far clearer to your consumer. Don't say that other products are not safe. Don't say that other ingredients aren't safe, because every cosmetic ingredient, when it's used within its regulatory limits, are considered safe. Now, a couple of sites that are really reliable, and again, this is really small. We did want to run a PowerPoint so you could see it nice and big. If you can see there, I've got a couple of hyperlinks. Cosmetic ingredient review and the Scientific Committee on Consumer Safety, STCS opinions. These are the main documents that I would recommend you reference and read if you want to make conclusions or to find out for yourself. I have listed another site there that I don't believe in and I don't want to encourage the use of, and to avoid controversy, you can read my PowerPoint, it's listed on there. But I am advising you to look at Cosmetic Ingredient Review and the SCCS opinions. Both of those hyperlinks are provided in that PowerPoint for you. Just type in the ingredient you're searching for and you'll see there's a huge amount of information to support or refute the safety of certain ingredients, and also how they drew their conclusions over the safe inputs of certain ingredients, including something as controversial as a paraben. Again, when they're used within limits, they have been tested. You wouldn't get a more studied ingredient, quite honestly, in our industry than parabens. And they have concluded the safe inputs, and they are very, very mild preservatives when they're used within the right limits, and they are perfectly safe to even use on baby products. And again, if you don't believe me, then this is probably not the best channel for you. If you are interested in finding the facts for yourself, please, I'm giving you the links. Go and have a look. And if you can't believe me, if you can't believe the 12 or so scientists that are behind that right research, then I don't think there's going to be much that is going to help convince you. So again, it's all about making sure that you're making the right claims. And I also do want to mention, for those of you selling into the EU, that you are also restricted by the EU cosmetic free from guidelines. In other words, you can't say free from certain ingredients in EU anymore because they just got so sick of the rubbish. The regulators got so sick of all of these free from claims that were scaring consumers away from otherwise perfectly safe and suitable cosmetic ingredients, that they made their free from claims. Now, I do have a video, free YouTube video on free from. Please watch that video. I go through the guidelines. Again, I didn't make up the guidelines, I'm just communicating them with you. So if you have an issue with the guidelines, please take that up with a regulator, not me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm simply providing the information to you. And it is a requirement, if you're going to be selling in the EU, that you comply with those free from guidelines, which means you can't say your product's free from parabens or sulfates or PEGs or propylene glycol, because there's nothing wrong with these ingredients when you're using them within regulatory limits. And really, the only one that has a regulatory limit is your parabens, and it's set there because they've done loads and loads and loads of research to make sure that it's safe and all of this other information. And then they do. If you don't believe me, again, look it up on SCCS opinions. You'll see that they've tested it for endocrine disruption. They've tested it on babies, like safe inputs for babies. They've tested it. Okay, so again, please look at that research. Again, there's probably no stronger researched ingredient than a paraben. And of course, there isn't limits on propylene glycol or sodium lauryl sulfate or your PEG materials because they're safe. There is a prohibition on 1,4-dioxane, which was present in these materials when they were developed for industrial use back in the 1970s. We're in 2021. Okay, so there's been loads and loads of research since then, and it is now a prohibited substance. And again, if you don't believe me, please go onto the COSIN website. You can go to Canada's hot list, and of course, even the FDA requires that you use other regulatory databases to prove the safety of your product before you put it on the market. So again, if you're unsure about any of this, if you don't believe that the industry is regulated, please watch or stay tuned for my video coming out where I show you how to do searches for lead and heavy metals, and I show you that you are not getting exposed to lead or heavy metal contaminants from your lipstick and makeup. But in that video, you'll actually see me do some of those searches. So when I'm conducting those searches, again, you'll see how it's in all of these government websites around the world. And the point is, I'm trying to show you, because again, I know there's so much misinformation on the internet. If I can show you enough, and then you can see how these searches are conducted and that these regulatory organizations do provide these limits for consumer safety, hopefully that will be a much stronger message than some celebrity telling you otherwise that really doesn't know how to put a product together. If we open up to some questions on safety, I do have a couple here left for emulsifiers, but please do post your questions about safety. But again, if you're sitting there probably a little stunned or surprised by this information, please have a look at the links in the PowerPoint document. Go and search those sites, use an inky name, and again, the information is there for you to justify how they've determined safety or safe limits. So question here back from the emulsifiers discussion. Is it important to calculate the HLB of the oils in the oil phase when choosing the right emulsifier? It used to be, but now the emulsifiers we use today are so advanced that you don't need to do those calculations. When you study with us, we do have as an appendix to the units and emulsifiers how those calculations are made. But we don't need to do those calculations anymore because the emulsifier materials we now use are so advanced that you don't need to worry about those big hefty calculations. You would pick high HLB, 10 or above, generally speaking, for your oil and water emulsions. You would pick low HLB, 8 and below generally, for your water and oil emulsions. But you can have a little bit of low HLB in your oil and water emulsions to help reduce white rubbing time. And again, that free video I've got on how to reduce excess white rubbing time does have, I explain it in that video for you. How do we pick the right co-emulsifier? Just mix and match and see how it performs. Co-emulsifier, as in non-ionic emulsifier, should be a blend, should be a blended material. And again, it should have the HLB reflective of whether you want to make oil and water or water and oil emulsion. So again, you'd pick generally 12 or above, but you could even pick 9 or 10 if you've got a good anionic emulsifier present, because the overall preference for forming oil and water emulsion would be there from your charged emulsifier. If you're using non-ionic on its own, I'd probably say use 12 and above for good stability. And then, of course, it's not just trial and error. It's about looking at the inputs recommended for each type of emulsifier. If you know nothing else, start in the middle, and you'd have, say, 7 to 10% of oils in your formula, and then make samples, because it does come down to a sensory decision as well. So definitely be prepared to make a few samples, because different emulsifiers will impact your viscosity in different ways. And if you don't make samples, you can't compare. I know sometimes I speak with people when they're new and they think that every sample should work out first go. Please don't think that way. There's nothing more fun than being at the bench and making a couple of different samples and then comparing how they feel or the viscosity, and then making your preference based on that. And I actually recommend that. And that's how you get to know the materials really well. We got a clean beauty question. In your personal opinion, what would be your definition of clean beauty? I don't like clean beauty. Clean beauty is a dirty word. There is no definition that I will possibly give you that I would ever accept. Sorry, there it is. I see clean beauty and I just want to facepalm. I can't give you a definition that I will accept because it has absolutely no science behind it. Not a question, but a comment. Here's a comment. While no approved ingredient will cause short-term harm, it's nearly impossible to determine if some things will be harmful over a long time, and many previously approved things do get banned over time. Do you know the amazing thing about science is science continues to learn? So what I would say to this person is that we do what we can with the best knowledge we have at hand at any one particular point in time. If that's not acceptable for you, then you can't call yourself a scientist, okay? And every scientist watching this would be agreeing that we only can ever work with the best information we have at any given time. Now, when it comes to your ingredients, the other thing I would recommend to the person that's made this comment is please go to the Cosmetic Ingredient Review site, please go to the SCCS site, and please read the huge amounts of data they have before you make this type of broad-based comment, because you obviously haven't seen the depth and the time over which they've done their studies. Their paraben studies, for example, are exhaustive, and they have not just run over the last few years, they have run for years and years and years. They've run from back in the 90s. Okay, and again, we're now in 2021. So please, before you just make this blanket statement, and again, if you don't like this comment, then please, you don't have to follow me. But for those of you out there who really want to hear my scientific opinion on a comment like this, I would encourage you to go and look at CIR, Cosmetic Ingredient Review, and SCCS opinion, and base your opinions on the amount of information there. Don't even base it on what I'm telling you today. Go to those websites. They're the websites, and they've got huge bodies of data. That is where you should form your opinion from, and that's what I would encourage you to do. And again, if we suddenly discover something that alters the information in these reviews, these companies are part of the organizational decision that help governments make their decisions. So if there is suddenly a new study that comes out that might oppose or conflict with something I've found before, that body of scientists will then review it for its scientific validity. And if it means that they have to update their opinion, you'll see on the SCCS opinions page that they've updated their opinion several times over the decades as new research has come out. So again, science isn't just today, this is my statement and this is my position for the rest of my life. Science is always learning, and I would encourage you to learn too and visit those sites. please don't make it about me. I am basing my opinions from the information on those sites, and I'm sharing those sites with you so that you can have your own informed opinions, better than what a celebrity or some company site trying to sell your product is trying to tell you. Please go to those sites. They are the government informed sites, and there's a huge amount of evidence and information there and studies, and they're updated constantly. And there's not much more we can do as scientists other than continue to learn from what we see and then make some scientific validated judgments based on that information. And you'll see they do exactly that. And that's the best that we can hope for. Facepalm, I'm glad you found that amusing too, because that's exactly how I feel. Another emulsifier question. You guys got a lot of emulsifier questions. How important to use HLB calculation to select emulsifiers? Oh, I did answer this, sort of answered this before. I would encourage you not to use calculations for HLB anymore. That was old science. Again, science is always learning. But one of the great things we have today is we have these amazing raw material suppliers that are constantly making our jobs easier. I'm not kidding. 10 or 20 years ago, when we were formulating, we had to do these big HLB calculations. And for anyone who's not aware of it, we would have to add up the different inputs of the different oils, and we would look at the different HLB requirements of the different oils, and then we would try and match them with the big calculations of the different HLB values of the different individual emulsifiers. We don't have to do that anymore. Thank goodness. We can look at the HLB of the emulsifier, and ideally emulsifier blend. Use blends. I'm encouraging you to use the blends. And the overall HLB value of that blend will instantly determine what type of emulsion will form when, of course, you use the right sort of oil input for that emulsifier. So in other words, no, you don't need to do these big HLB calculations anymore, but look for the supplier's data, look for the HLB value of their emulsifier blend, and then look at the amount of oil that you're going to be using in your formula compared to the recommendations and data that they have used their emulsifier for. And that's about as hard as the calculations get these days. So thank you to the amazing raw material suppliers that have made our life easier. And also part of this fantastic extra research that they've done with this is, of course, they've made some beautiful sensory updates to their emulsifiers as well. So they now feel amazing. They actually contribute to the sensory feeling of the formula. Question, what are the best emulsifiers that is compatible with honey? Well, honey is actually water soluble, so it depends on whether you're making oil in water or water in oil emulsion, and your honey will go into the water phase. If you're making a water in oil emulsion, your water phase needs to be quite small generally. Your oil phase would generally be the larger portion of the emulsion, so your honey is going to take up some of that water portion. So again, you're really just stabilizing your emulsion, whether it be oil and water or water and oil. Just remember that honey is going to take up some of that water portion. The other thing too is if you have honey present in your formula, just remember it's not really going to provide you any sort of bacterial or microbial protection. It's actually a food source when you put it into your cosmetic ingredients, especially in your smaller amounts. And even if you were using it to protect against some bacteria, it's very selective. So please don't put it in the formula thinking that it's going to protect the formula in any way. It's probably going to increase its micro potential by being a food source. So again, preservative selection, very, very important if you're adding that type of ingredient to your formula. How can I test the stability of my emulsion at home? That is definitely a stability question. I did mention earlier that freeze thaw is one of the best accelerated tests for your emulsions. And definitely when it comes to stability, please learn stability properly. And you can do it at home. We have our certificate in cosmetic quality and stability, which also teaches you how to run your own microbial tests, and you can do it all at home. You'll need a clean area, and we do go through what is a clean area. So definitely you can do these tests at home, but please learn it properly, because just doing accelerated stability, freeze thaw testing, high temperature is not enough. You need to do real time as well. And definitely if you're going to be selling in the EU, you need to hold the full stability protocols and data as part of your product information file. So you do need to have proper stability methods, which you can do at home, but please learn it properly. We also have our study only option and our certificate in cosmetic quality and stability, which makes it extremely cost effective to run the tests yourself at home. A comment on clean beauty. I have been saying this same thing for years. Thank you. Not just me. Nice to know I've got at least one friend out there, but wasn't taken seriously because I was just a makeup artist. Actually, you know what? I think it's fantastic that as a makeup artist, you've taken that stance, because I've got to say the beauty professionals in this industry are fed a lot of misinformation by companies trying to sell them products. So well done you for seeing through it. I do definitely feel for the beauty therapists and makeup artists when they're fed all this misinformation. Also, I hear so much about silicons being bad for the hair from hairdressers. It's got to stop. I've just had a silicon video come out where I address a lot of the myths about silicon use in hair care. It's not true. Silicons do not coat the hair any more than an oil would. But I hear that all the time from hairdressers. I hear all the time from beauty therapists, makeup artists about how toxic our chemicals are, our cosmetics are. And look, if that's all you're ever fed, I feel for you, because what are you meant to believe? But again, that's why I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to go and do the research yourself on these government sites and make your own decisions from these very informed scientists. And they're huge. They're like 70 pages long, these reports. So, you know, they're talking about something interesting if they can make a report that long. And again, they had this for so many different ingredients. Again, when we were doing the restream, I was going to show you the sites, but we had a little bit of a technical difficulty with the restream. But the sites are still in this PowerPoint. Please go and investigate them. You don't even have to believe me, but please investigate it for yourself. So well done if you've been in that industry and you've been sold a lot of product. Again, if you're sitting there today feeling a little bit, oh God, like what do I believe now? I understand if you've been sold a lot of this rubbish, because you know what, the sales reps selling to you have only been told the same thing. But you are hearing it from a cosmetic chemist now. You are hearing it from an industry professional who trains people. And not just am I saying, I'm giving you the sites so you can do your own research. Again, I'm giving you the tools so that you can find out for yourself. So well done if you saw through that. But definitely, I feel for those of you out there that haven't had the good, reliable sites to go to before. But you've got them now, and I hope that that really helps. I think we've got one more question coming through, and then we'll end the live for today. Remember, contact us, info@personalcarescience.com.au, so that you can get this PowerPoint. Also, if you are very new to the industry, we do have our free Cosmetic Formulation Fundamentals Masterclass online. So you go to our website, personalcarescience.com.au. If you go to our free video and blog page, you will see, or even our workshop page, you'll see a link there to our free, it's totally free, Cosmetic Formulation Fundamentals Masterclass. It is 15 lectures over 6 hours of video content. It comes with a booklet, 50-page booklet. You learn how to make 3 different types of products, a mist, an organic cream, and an organic shampoo. You will also learn about equipment, setting up your at-home lab space. You will also learn a heap of brand-specific information when you want to bring out your brands. Totally free. Why am I doing it totally free? Because again, I'm sick of the misinformation that's out there on the internet. So I want to put some good stuff on the internet too, good information that you can rely on, which is why I provide this information. Because fundamentally, and at the end of the day, if we're all really on the same page about developing fantastic products, because what does a consumer want at the end of the day? They want a product that works, and they are entitled to believe and trust that the products they're using are safe, and it's a company requirement putting the product onto the market. We've talked about that already, that product is safe and suitable to use. But end of the day, if you've got a brand, you want it to be the best it can be. So let's focus on that performance. And there's nothing wrong if you want to have a high natural content. I'm not saying that either, but I'm just saying we can't be saying that certain ingredients aren't safe or suitable when they are, if they're allowed under your regulations. So it's really about having the best performance in the product, and definitely, you know, looking at that sustainability. Sustainability is so important. I definitely believe in using sustainable ingredients, but so do our raw material suppliers. They're doing a lot about sustainability in their products. And again, if that's what's important to you, then make that claim, not clean beauty. Clean beauty doesn't mean sustainable. Sustainable means emulsifiers. Please do discuss this with your material suppliers. Definitely, I do have a video, Venicity, and definitely in that video, I give you, and in our Dropbox links, I give you the full report so you can see the list of emulsifiers that can be comedogenic. So definitely have a look at that report, but then also speak with your suppliers. More and more suppliers are doing the research and the studies to find your less comedogenic materials. So again, it's not just a blanket statement that I can make, but definitely build those relationships with your suppliers. They're the ones to ask. And definitely we're seeing more and more work in this area, which is fantastic, because it means we've got more and more choice when we want to create our products. With our little PowerPoint that we've got, I also have some extra frequently asked questions we get about study with us. It's 100% online. You can study at a time and place that suits you no matter where you are in the world. Sorry, one final question. What do you think is coming next after the clean beauty trend? Sustainability. Sustainability is totally where we're going, and thank goodness. I'm a big fan of upcycling, when we can use materials that we can use waste in a better way, but that only applies to a few ingredients, but I like that concept. Definitely recyclable packaging, some innovative packaging trends that can help us reduce our waste is also really good, but definitely sustainability and looking at how we can conserve our current world for the generations to come. And that's important to me personally, but I do believe that that's definitely where we're going, and it's a great way to be. So thank you again for joining me. Sorry about the initial technical difficulties. We will definitely try and work on that and resolve that before our Thursday live. Hopefully you can join me on Thursday as well. That is 4 p.m. Brisbane time zone. Google Brisbane for where you are in the world and see what time zone we're on. Thank you again, and yeah, apologies again about the technical, but thank you for rejoining us on this live now, and I hope you got a lot out of today. Please investigate those sites. I hope you really enjoy the access to those sites and get good peace of mind, and of course even greater perspective about the types of products you're going to create in the future. So once again, thank you very much and happy formulating.